All right, so part 2, week 2, we're going to cover the actual Unity editor. So here I went to Unity Hub and I just created a new project and I put it's a basic 3D project, location, where you want to put it, and project name. Think about backing up once in a while. There's always a few students whose computers get wiped out, and then the project gets wiped out. All my code is up on GitHub, so it's not the end of the world in this class, but think about backing up once in a while. So this is what the Unity editor looks like. You see up here, this is the project name. This is the scene. So games or apps can be broken down into sections or scenes. You don't build everything all at once. This is the platform we're building for, which you don't really need to worry about. We're just doing standalone. We're just building for desktop. This is the version of Unity. So it's the most stable version right now is 2022. And up here we have just our basic menus that you're used to. So just file here. If you ever need to create new scenes or save it, you don't really switch projects that much in this class, and you're not really getting into builds, although I'll be covering that. Edit, I don't really come in here that much, but we did have to know about how to deal with preferences. We're going to be covering in the next video what assets are, what game objects are, what components are. These are the 3 big things of building games and apps in this environment, and we'll be covering all 3. But there's like some major actions for them up here. Services you don't have to worry about. Windows is useful to know about. All of these are windows. So here you can see hierarchy. You can see scene and game. Here you can see inspector, project, and console. These are the major windows you'll be using. Notice they're kind of docked. Some of them are like tabbed up, like multi-tab, but they're in the same little kind of viewing pane. Like I can grab the game view, which I'll discuss what it is in a bit, and I can dock it somewhere else. And you can kind of move the size of all these things. You can also delete them or close the tab. You know, you can really change it up to your heart's delight. You can spread it across multiple monitors. If you ever like feel like you broke it, you don't know what's going on, and you don't know how to fix it, you can just go to Window, Layouts, and Default. And it will rebuild your interface back to the default. And while we're on Windows, I will say that under General here, if you ever deleted or closed them and need to bring them back, notice we have like Scene View, Game View, Inspector, Hierarchy, Project, Console. Those are all the ones that are open. They're the basic windows. All right, so if you ever close them and you can bring them back, you can come here. We will be covering toward the end of the semester animation, animator, how to get some animation going. But that's it. That's everything we're touching. There's more stuff. We don't care about it because that's getting into more particulars of gaming. This is more just kind of like general app development. You don't have to worry about these buttons here. Up here, this is where you can play and pause your app or game. So as you're building it, you need to test it quickly. You don't want to have to like build the exe and then run it and then find an issue and then go back and edit it and build it again, especially when you're building for other platforms like mobile. So you want to test right in the editor. The whole trick with development is really quickly finding bugs with your code, which Visual Studio will help you with, or logic issues. Something's not running as you thought it would, and you need to actually run the app to see that. So this is the play button and the pause button, and you click play again to stop it. These over here, you don't have to worry about. But, oh, I didn't realize that the windows, you could just reset over there. That's great. Okay, the tabs that we're going to be looking at, again, hierarchy, project, console, scene view, game view, and inspector. So everything you see here is all meant to help you dive at different levels of detail of all the working parts of your application. I think it's best to start in project view. So project view is actually like your file explorer. Your project view holds your assets. Your assets are your files of your project. Right now it's empty. Yeah, there's these packages. This is stuff that's coming along with Unity. You didn't create it. But notice in assets, and here we have scenes. There's this sample scene. We need something to get started. We just have like a scene that's already available for us, and there it is. I can click on it. Notice this is like kind of like a tree view, like a file directory. Over here is like the details within that folder. So here we're in assets, scenes. There's one file, one asset, and here's the name of it, and the icon of it, and the file name shows you that it's a Unity scene. .unity means it's a scene. And up in our hierarchy, which we'll move to later, notice the scene is exposed and shown in the hierarchy. This is actually the scene that we're looking at in the scene view. We're looking into the scene that we're building. And up here, we see that we have sample scene open. Now, if I right click on it, we could say show in Explorer. And here's my file explorer showing me what's on my hard drive. Notice this is the location that I saved out my Unity project. If I go to it, you see I have many projects. I'll go into the Unity project root folder I just created. Inside of it is everything that is needed for the Unity editor to build this project. You just need to know, like, at the root here is our Visual Studio solution file. This just manages kind of the connection with Visual Studio and Unity. We don't even need to worry about all this stuff, really just assets, because assets is what we see down here. It is the assets for our project. And right now we just have a scenes folder. And notice that there's a meta file that comes along. So Unity manages all of its files and folders. Many game engines do this, so that it's aware of what's doing what and where it's placed and all this stuff. Do not mess around and delete this stuff. If I dive into the folder, notice that there is just a Unity scene file called sample scene, just like you see here. And there's a meta file associated with it. If you ever need to delete stuff, you just right click and delete. Let Unity manage that file for you and delete its meta files. Do not go into the scene view and go into the assets folder and mess around with it through your file explorer. If you ever need to add files like audio files or textures or 3D models or other stuff, basically you find the folder that they're in and you just drag and drop them over to here. I don't really have anything interesting in my downloads. I used to have a bunch of images and stuff, but you just drag it. Unity will put it into the file structure. Unity will add its meta files and everything, and you'll see it here. So the project view is really like your own little managed file explorer. Right now, there's nothing in it, but after I'm showing an empty Unity editor, I'll open up the IT201 like complete project, and you'll see like materials and meshes and script files and a whole bunch of stuff in there, and I'll show you a more complicated version of what's happening. Real quick, I just saw somebody comment something. Yeah, it's metadata. Yep, it's how Unity Engine is managing, because when you when you drag stuff in the files, I'll show you later, there's like all these import settings. There's different compressions and settings you can do for audio files and texture files and set them up so that they work correctly within the game engine. And so all that, whenever you tweak them in the inspector, that changes. That'll be metadata. That'll be stored in the meta file. So that's the project view. And the only thing left really that's interesting is you have the slider. So if you want to see like just a list of files, or if you want to see them as icons, you can move this. The console, we're not going to get started with that till next week, but this is your dev console. This will print out notifications, warnings, and errors of your code. It's very common for you to do print statements to be like, as during runtime, wait, what is this? What's this object doing? What's this field doing? What have you? And you print out the value to make sure it's like you know that you think it's doing what it's supposed to be doing. It's how you track down logic issues. And if there's just bug issues, syntax issues, your code isn't written correctly, you'll get errors here. And this will populate out. So we'll see that later on. The hierarchy is very important. The hierarchy shows all of the game objects that are building up to make your scene. Here, they're always contained in a scene. And so here we have our sample scene, and if you open it, notice there's an arrow. We only have a camera and a light source. It's like the most basic elements needed to just see something in computer graphics, just see something on the screen. So to see something, we can look into our scene view. This is like your dev eyes into the world, right? We're looking around. I can move around this world. There's like a grid on the floor. There's just like this horizon. So like there's kind of like this ground and this sky. And I'm just looking around. I'm holding down the Alt key and the left mouse button. If you don't have a mouse, get one. You know, it's okay if you're messing around on a trackpad in the class because you're not really built. You're just like listening to me in the class. But when you're at home, please use a mouse. It's going to make moving around in the 3D world a lot easier. So it's Alt key and left drag. And notice my mouse icon kind of turns into like an eye. Notice that this gizmo up here, this like compass that's showing you your orientation is moving around. And what I have selected right now is the main camera. And this is what it looks like. If I click off it, notice I don't get all that drawing. And there's like, here's a little icon for the camera. Here's a little icon for our directional light source. So there's not much in the scene right now. It's a pretty empty scene. You're just starting. The game view is what the player sees, what the user will see when they run your application. Right now it's an empty world, but they're looking through this main camera. So if I jump over to scene view and if I select the main camera, notice we have like a little kind of preview of what the user sees. This is what the developer sees. I'm like God mode. I can look anywhere, do anything. The user is constrained by the main camera. The main camera is just looking out into our virtual world and painting to the scene, to the screen, painting to the monitor what the camera sees, so it's transcribed to the user. That's why the game view is like just, I can't move around because it's not free access like on the developer. So let me just put one thing into the world so that hopefully this makes sense. I'm just going to go up to Game Object, 3D Object. I'm just going to put a sphere in the world. All right. The sphere is placed there. I don't know if it's in camera view. Luckily it is. The camera, this big like pyramid shape is called a frustum. And it's kind of like what the camera sees out in the world. It's like how your eyes work. So in perspective, you kind of can see a broader view the farther out something is. That's why we're at this kind of angle U. I think your field of view is something like, this says field of view 60 degrees, but the human eye might be something different. But in any case, if an object is in this kind of pyramid shape, it's going to be viewable to the camera. So the sphere is in front of the camera. I'm just going to pull the game view off and over. And on the left is dev view. On the right is player game user view. So as I move the sphere more toward the camera, it's getting closer. And eventually, as it gets too far, we pass the camera and we don't see it anymore. So objects need to be in front of the camera to see it. Cool. All right. So in our scene, and if I were to build this, the player just sees this, an empty world with a sphere in it. And I can click play, and we're like compiling the app. We're going to run it. And it's just this. There's nothing else happening. It's just what the player sees. So the camera, I click on it. Over in the inspector is all the details. So we have assets that are saved to the scene, saved to the file. We have game objects up here that compose our scene. And as we click on each object, game object, we see all the details here. And these are called components. So we have this idea of assets and this idea of a scene that's composed of scene objects. And each scene object, or game object, I should say, has kind of like metadata associated with it. So here we have the name of it. Here we have tags and layers, which we'll be covering later. But notice there's like a line here, and then there's little components. A transform and a camera and an audio listener underneath it. And all of them have like a bunch of stuff going on. But we don't have to look at everything all at once, right? So just know if I change this main camera, call it main camera 1, see how the name changed. So what's important here is, let me just click File, Save. And there was like a little star there because I changed my scene. I put a sphere in, I changed the name of the camera, I saved it. So think of this as like your working memory. This is your scene in your memory. It's not saved though. You're doing a whole bunch of changes. And when you have that little star, it's like a working document. It hasn't been saved to your hard drive. Go to File, Save. So then if I go File, New Scene, let me just create like an empty scene or something. I just want to bounce out. When you close down shop and open your computer back up, you can just open your scene and it remembers your details. So we have this difference of being saved to your hard drive and saved into your memory so that you can work from memory and then save to your hard drive. All right, so scene objects and component objects. So here we have our component objects. And I'm going to cover these, I think, in another video. I don't want to get too in depth with those right now. And I got to cover the fact that we have a light source and a 3D object and what their relationships mean. But let me pause here and say, as I'm clicking on stuff, these scene objects build my scene. Each scene object has so many complexity details about it that we look at it in the inspector. And all these complexity is too much at once, so we break up all the behaviors and major features of a scene object even into component objects. And that's the relationship here with the project view, assets, hierarchy, these scene objects, and the inspector showing the details of the scene objects. And then looking out to the world, we have scene view and game view. So that was a lot. I'm going to take a pause. Is there any questions? What was covered? All right, I'm going to stop the video.